Center for the Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson about the necessity for rule of law. In our last lesson, we learned about the relationship between rule of law and the Constitution. We also discussed the similarities and differences between the federal and state constitutions in Ethiopia. In this lesson, we will focus on the reasons that make rule of law so important. I think this will be a very interesting lesson, students. Let us begin. The constitutions of democratic countries ensure that rule of law is upheld in the land. Rule of law establishes restrictions both for those who govern and for those who are governed. Government officials are elected to hold offices, and they must respect the basic rights of citizens. They also have a duty to obey the law. Rule of law imposes restrictions on citizens who must act in accordance with the law. Rule of law contributes greatly to the principle of equality because all people, regardless of gender, race, ethnicity, religion, or cultural background, are subject to the laws of the country. We can perhaps best understand the necessity for rule of law by thinking about some of the problems that arise when rule of law does not prevail. Students, can you think of an example in Ethiopian history when rule of law was absent? What were the results?
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Hello again, students. One fairly recent example of the absence of rule of law in Ethiopia is the Red Terror of the late 1970s. During this time, the military dictatorship waged a campaign of terror over the unprotected and defenseless civilians of Ethiopia. They did this as a way to combat opposition to the regime. The result was that many atrocities were committed against human rights. Many people were killed or forced into exile. Ethiopians did not have the right to a fair trial, as they were often seized and executed with insufficient evidence. They did not have the right to freedom of speech. In fact, expressing an opinion that opposed the Derg regime often resulted in death or in the death of family members. This example shows us that when rule of law fails, human rights are violated. The absence of rule of law means that power is unlimited, which can put citizens in danger. Where there is no rule of law, there can be no justice. Where there is no justice, the people do not feel secure, and they can start to fear their government and those in power over them. Rule of law promotes the common good. Students, what is meant by common good?
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Good work, everyone. Common good refers to a good that is shared by and is beneficial for all people. It represents an ideal, the greatest possible good for the greatest number of people. It requires an admission of the individual's basic right in society. Students, how can you work for the common good? Take a few moments to imagine this and write your answers down.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Hello again, students. I wonder what your answers were. There are many different ways that we can work for the common good. We can take responsibility for our lives so that we are reliable and self-sufficient members of society. We can pursue virtue and truth and live in accordance with the law. Working for the common good means that we try to make the world a better place. Democracy gives citizens the freedom to try to achieve the common good. One of the main advantages of democracy is that it gives citizens the opportunity to control their own lives and the direction of their country's policies. It promotes hope for the future. Rule of law means that there is a legally established and fair procedure for resolving conflicts and regulating social relations. This results in legal protection and equality. Conflict is something that arises in human interaction. Rule of law helps us to prevent and manage conflict by providing us with legal structures and established procedures. This means that rule of law works to prevent violence resulting from conflict. Conflicts can include disagreements over the use of natural resources, boundaries, grazing land, and water. To resolve these conflicts legally, citizens must adhere to the principles of the Constitution. Students, this is the end of our lesson. We have learned that rule of law is necessary for restricting those who govern and those who are governed, for protecting the basic rights of citizens, and for promoting the common good. In our next lesson, we will discuss rule of law and conflict management. Until then, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.